This incident occurred when I was 20 years old. I'm 22 now, so it wasn't that long ago. While I was in college, I worked as a babysitter during the week for one family, and on weekends, I would nanny for another wealthier family. They often went away on the weekends, leaving their two kids in my care, and I would stay at their house for the weekend. They had a dedicated guest bedroom just for me, and the family was incredibly kind, so it was honestly a great arrangement while it lasted. This incident happened in the fall when the leaves were falling, and it was chilly outside. I had arrived at the house on a Friday, and Friday night went completely fine. I spent my time playing with the two kids, whom I'll nickname James and Jessica. James was 7 years old, and Jessica was 5. They were both cute and well-behaved. Jessica's bedtime was at 7:30, while James went to bed at 8:30. During the day, I played with each of them with their toys. The family had two dedicated rooms for their toys, one for Jess and one for James. Jessica loved her dolls and dollhouses, so I spent a lot of time playing with her. James loved playing video games, so I would watch him play. These kids really had everything, and the house was gorgeous. The property was enormous, with a big pond in the middle, a separate 3-car garage, and a pool across the pond. The pool house was like a bar, game room with a pool table, darts, arcade games, and a giant TV, along with multiple sofas. The family was well off to the point of extravagance. They even had an intercom system that connected the pool house to the main house. This meant that if you pressed a button on the wall in either place, it would ring, and you could communicate through it. After the kids went to bed, I had the freedom to do as I pleased for the night. I wasn't allowed to have friends over, and I respected that rule. I would simply FaceTime my friends and watch movies in the pool house to pass the time. It was not a bad place to have free time in, I'll tell you that. I started feeling hungry, so I walked back across the property to the house, entered the code to let myself in, and went to the kitchen. They had plenty of snacks and food that I was allowed to help myself to. I grabbed a frozen snack from the freezer, heated it in the microwave, and then returned to the pool house. I liked spending time in the pool house because I could talk on the phone with my friends more loudly and have the TV volume as high as I wanted without waking the kids. I was on the couch, eating, watching the movie White Chicks, and texting a bunch of my friends. I was in the middle of telling my friends how great this gig was when the intercom beeper startled me. I rushed to answer it and heard Jessica's voice on the other end. She said she was scared because she kept hearing noises. Usually, she would sleep through the night, so I knew I had to go and comfort her. I set my food down, ran back across the yard to the house, entered using the code lock again, and went to Jessica's room. She must have gone straight back to her bed after we ended the intercom call, because she was already back in her bed, looking scared. I went to tickle her and tuck her in to make her feel better. When she seemed more at ease, I left her room, shut the door, and walked down the hall to the kitchen to grab some wine. While looking for a wine opener, I heard the faintest creak in the wooden floor, coming from another room. I froze, looking in that direction and waiting for a second sound. I didn't want to start freaking myself out at this point. I didn't want Jessica's claim of hearing noises to get into my head. I thought it might have been a regular house-settling noise. I admit I was a little creeped out by now, but I left the lights and TV on in the pool house, so I had to go back. I went outside, locked the door with the code, and ran back across to the pool house. I sat back down on the couch and resumed eating the rest of my food. I didn't end up bringing the wine. I still had White Chicks on, though I was mostly just getting distracted on my phone. Then, that damn intercom went off again, making me jump in my seat. I rushed to answer it, and when I did, there was silence on the other end. I said Jessica's name into the microphone. I was sure I heard someone breathing, but that's all I could hear. I said both Jessica and James' names at least 3 times each. Suddenly, I was actually starting to become terrified. I called my friend Kelsey and told her I wanted her to come here because I was genuinely scared. I told her that the little girl I was watching claimed to be hearing noises, and then I heard a noise. Now, someone had pressed the intercom button but didn't say anything. I felt like it was not something one of the kids would do. I was still on the phone with Kelsey, who was telling me to stop being paranoid, but she also sounded drunk. I was looking out the window at the house the whole time I was on the phone with her. The hallway lights turned on, and any possibility that it was one of the kids disappeared when a large figure stepped into frame at one of the hallway windows. I screamed and dropped the phone as I was looking at a grown man who seemed to see me and was looking back at me. I realized the intercom was still on this entire time. I picked up my phone, hung up on Kelsey, and called 911. As I did, I was crying and screaming into the intercom that I'm calling 911 right now. Leave us alone. I was basically screaming everything I said to the police into the intercom. I went back to the window, and he wasn't at the window in the house anymore. I was hysterical, crying, begging the 911 operator to please hurry up. She kept telling me to calm down and asked me a million questions. I kept yelling the address into the phone, saying, "Please hurry." When she asked if the kids were safe, I screamed, "No, they're in the house still with that man." That's when I heard Jessica's voice speaking into the intercom, saying my name. I went over and shouted, "Yes, I'm here. Get your brother and get out of the house." She was crying, saying that there was a man in here. I said, "Yes, I know. Just get your brother and come outside now." It was the bravest thing I had ever done. I ran outside, back across the yard to the house, and met the two kids, who were already at the door. I grabbed both of them and led them back across the yard to the pool house again. We hid with the lights off. Both of them were crying, and I still wanted to as well, but I had to be strong and keep it together for them. I was still on the phone with 911. She eventually told me that the police were here and that they would come meet us at the pool house. Those words were the most comforting words I'd heard in my life. The flashlights of the police shone through the windows. I led the kids to the door, where we met a couple of police officers. The female cop took the kids with her to one car, and I went with another cop to another car. There were already 3 police cars in front of the house, and more kept showing up. I answered all the questions I was asked, and then they found him. They brought out a guy who looked to be right around 60. He looked at everyone as he was brought out in handcuffs and put in the back of a car. I still remember his face as he looked at me. He looked like the product of incest, his face was messed up. Jessica and James' parents were called right away, and they were made aware of the situation. There was no way any of us were staying there that night. The parents arranged for the kids' aunt to come and pick them up to stay with her, and I guess she called out of work the next day. I went home after they didn't need me anymore, but when I got home that night, I didn't sleep. I was still in shock, and I think I still had a leftover adrenaline rush. The parents understandably didn't leave their kids alone for a long time after that. I'm sure they pressed charges to the fullest extent, and with their resources, I hope that creep got what he deserved and more. I respectfully told them I couldn't stay there anymore, because I was haunted by that night. I could only imagine how scarred those poor kids were, and maybe still are.